Tourette's podcast is not a medical advice show. It's a show about experiences. In the course of that, we may talk about medications or therapies or stories from the doctor's office, but don't mistake any of that for medical advice or direction. It's not. Get that only from people or places licensed or certified to give it, not from a massively fun and action-packed podcast about our life experiences, such as...
The misconceptions about it has created this situation that a lot of us go through where people it's so hard to convince people of this syndrome you have. It's exhausting, honestly.
This is Tourette's podcast, made possible with support of the Tourette Association of America and part of the Geeks Rising Network. Hey everybody, it's Ben. So there's a milestone of life described here in the words of our guest today, Erick, where he says, quote, "You just can't waste your energy anymore worrying about the people who try and deny who you are and what you have." End quote. That's a statement on personal life, not on the grand scheme, just to keep in context. We're always going to advocate and group together and try to show the world what Tourette really looks like, or in other words, the variety that Tourette can show while its people deal with things on the personal level. And you've got your own life to live and decisions to make on how you manage your own life. Erick has considered this from multiple angles, including the fact that he's trans and has had to deal with individuals invalidating comments and beliefs on that level too. Again, we are in the minds of advocating for the people like us, speaking generally. But when it comes to living our own lives, there are so many considerations minute to minute. Who do we let into our lives? Who is going to affirm us? Who are we connected with who we hope will one day affirm us but don't yet? I love how Erick goes about this conversation and the shout out he gives to trans Touretters who may be in situations of being especially misunderstood or doubted or just plain invalidated. That's not what the whole of this conversation coming up is about, but it is worth highlighting how powerful we are as a group, but how tiring it can be for the individual, which is why we love your friendship, allyship, advocacy, and basic levels of empathy. We talk about that part a lot on Tourette's podcast. This community we have and how just knowing its existence helps. We still have our day-to-day battles, but just knowing there's a big community here of people who get it matters, especially as we individually often live within a feeling of isolation with Tourette. It's not a rare situation to have Tourette syndrome, but your experience sure might feel that way. Might feel that way as a family too. Maybe for parents of someone who has Tourette syndrome, that might feel really isolating. But there's an actuality still, just as something to remember. There's still a big community of people ready to just be there for you. So that's coming up in just a few on Tourette's podcast. First, let me remind you that the sponsor of this podcast, the Tourette Association of America, now in its 50th year, has its 2022 gala coming up. The date is November 10th, and I'll have the link in the show notes with this episode at tourettespodcast.com. Again, November 10th. It's at the Tribeca rooftop in New York City, starting at 6 p.m. Right now, you can buy tickets, you can take on a sponsorship, you can make a donation, all for the gala. Again, I'll have a link with the info with this episode at tourettespodcast.com, or you can go to tourette.org. That's the website of the Tourette Association, tourette.org, and find the events calendar. November 10th, 2022, the Tourette Gala. I'd like to say hello to all the new listeners. We had a big bump in new listenership over the past couple weeks. Welcome to all of you. This is a podcast where my name is Ben, someone who has Tourette syndrome. I talk with someone else out there in the world who also has it. And then we just go at it, talking about our lives and what Tourette is meant for it, all completely unscripted, just to let the magic intersections kind of reveal themselves. I didn't have to go far to find our latest guest, Erick, who lives really just down the road from me in Durham, North Carolina. So I was excited to talk with him, and let's just get right to it this week. This is me talking with Erick.
My name is Erick, and I live in the Durham, Raleigh, North Carolina area of the U.S., and I own a cleaning business here in this area. I started my cleaning business in April of 21, and it's taken off from there, and that's what I've been doing ever since.
Oh, that's awesome. So like office cleaning, that kind of thing, or household, or?
Both, actually. It started out just as like a residential. I just wanted to do residential. And then I got contacted by several like offices and stuff. and some nail salons and hair salons. And so I just started doing those because, I wasn't about to say no to them. So it's become both, actually. And I just had a really good time.
Curious what led to that, because it's a lot of people I know have started businesses of their own since 2020. There's something about that time period that just kind of got them thinking about, what else could I be doing? Am I really being my most productive? Or maybe I had this idea, maybe now's the time to act on it. Was there anything like that at play with you?
Yes, actually. So I had been going through years of getting a job and then going through a depressive episode and getting fired for not showing up. It was just this endless cycle. I worked at Starbucks and I had been fired like 3 times from Starbucks. They gave me so many chances. And then I went to school to become a veterinary technician, and I dropped out of there because of a depressive episode. I ended up getting a job as a vet tech without the degree, and ended up getting fired from there. So I was just like, I really should just become my own boss. That way I can work on my own schedule. I'm not going to be able to be fired by anybody, and I can make my own rules. So I decided to use the stimulus checks and start my business. And it was like one of the best ideas that I've ever had to do that.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's so cool that you used your stimulus check to, I was just talking with my friend Justin about this earlier, and we were talking about how we work and our sort of, respective styles of working, and how kind of growing up, there's sort of the traditional, here's the right way to do it. Here's the, and everything else is wrong, or here's the wrong way to do it. And sometimes, when you have maybe as they say, a neurodivergent brain, it's, you kind of you do have your own way of doing things, like things that work for you kind of specifically that may be a little bit outside of what the norm is. And going back to, we did an episode a long time ago with an artist named Louis Rossignol, and he was talking about kind of, pursuing your talents and really, kind of where you see yourself fit most. And, sometimes, yeah, that is just starting a business on your own terms. And like, that can be more successful than what you've tried before, which is amazing of you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I was told my whole life, go to college. If you don't, you're going to end up working at McDonald's, the whole like putting down of people that work in fast food and stuff. And so, I tried, and, I felt, because most of the other people in my graduating class of high school went on to college, I didn't. And so I felt so bad about myself, watching all these people 4 years later graduating on Facebook. And I just felt so down on myself. And then, I was like, I just went my own way. And, my mom has always been very supportive of me. And I told her back when I saw all these people graduating, how bad I felt. And she was like, you had to do what you had to do. You were going through some stuff at the time that none of those other people were, as far as
Mm-hmm.
and you had to deal with your own stuff. So you had to create your own path. And, so yeah, it's ended up just working out. It always has, you will get down on yourself, and then, at least in my experience, it always ends up working out.
It's like when you finally see it for yourself, and you finally put trust in yourself to kind of lay it down and, this is what I'm going to do. I know this is going to work for me better than these other ways have. It's like a revelation. It's like a lightning strike when that finally happens and you have that realization. It's really, really freeing. And it kind of gets you thinking about like, where have I been all this time? Like I've been kind of operating by this rule book of, here's what's right and here's what's wrong. I have this own style that seems to work for me, but it's wrong. So I probably shouldn't do that. Let me just keep doing the traditional way of doing things. And that's something that can translate all kinds of different ways to all kinds of different people listening. But just being able to see that revelation of like, I can invest my stimulus money and I can actually make this work, and seeing it work. I mean, actually seeing it take off. It wasn't just some, half effort. I mean, this is really, really cool.
Yes.
Talking about, different things you've gone through, like depression and so on. How early can you trace back, maybe kind of noticing there was something different about yourself, whether it was Tourette or whether it's maybe signs that you now see as depression, or I can remember back when I'm a little kid and I remember my earliest tics and so on. How far back does this go with you?
I was told that my first tick started very, very young, like 2, 3 years old. And it was, I don't know, apparently this is a common thing. After listening to your podcast, I've discovered this, but the blinking tick, where you blink really hard
Hmm.
or a lot and you're taken
Yeah.
to the eye doctor. And they took me to the eye doctor. The doctor said nothing is wrong. And so then nothing was really looked into after that. And then my tics stayed extremely mild all the way up until high school. And that's also when my depression really started to hit me. And
Hmm.
the very last thing on my mind was doing schoolwork and stuff like that. That was not a
Right.
priority to me. And I would be in a silent classroom and I'd be doing my weird throat tics. That's when my vocal tics started. And everybody would turn and stare. And, I'm over here like trying to suppress as hard as I can. And it's just not working.
Yeah.
Uh, and then there was a time where we were having a movie night, me, my brothers, and my mom. And I was told by my mom that I had been ticking so hard during that movie, she thought I was having a seizure at one point. Um,
Huh. Yeah.
so, yeah, it got really bad in high school. And then, but it never got to the point of like coprolalia or, to where I couldn't suppress it in public. It was not to the point where I couldn't function as a normal person. Um, and then it kind of died down in my early 20s a bit. Just
Hmm.
in the last month or so, really. I went to Indiana in mid-September, and right after getting back, it started happening where I started getting coprolalia, and I have been like, screaming in public, and it's become something it never has been.
Hmm.
But to go back to the depression part, I
Yeah.
was hospitalized my senior year of high school for suicidal ideation. Trigger warning
Hmm.
for anybody. But while I was there, they were asking like, why do you feel this way? Why do you feel this way? And I could not come up with an answer for them. I was like, I cannot tell you. I don't know.
Yeah.
And it ended up being gender dysphoria. And I wouldn't realize that until about a year and a half later after I graduated high school.
Hmm.
Um, but it was like I had this feeling, but I didn't have a word for it. And so, they were like, why do you feel like you don't want to be here anymore? I'm like, I have no clue. Um, and then it was like a light bulb moment about a year
Yeah.
later when I realized that I was trans.
Was there anything, and forgive me if these are ignorant questions, but I mean, was there anything in particular that you said it was a light bulb moment? Was there any sort of, occurrence, or did you, like, how did that light bulb go off?
Yeah, no questions are off limits. You're good. Um, and so I was on Facebook one night and I was really down and I was still feeling that feeling, not having a word for it. And then it happened to be Transgender Awareness Day, week, or something like that.
Hmm.
And one of my friends posted on Facebook that they were non binary. They came out as non binary. And I was like, that's that's it. Like I'm not non-binary. I'm a transgender guy, but it was like a light bulb moment. I was like, this is what I've been feeling. This is it. And so I ended up
Wow.
coming out to my mom first. I wrote her a letter. I came out to my mom, and there was some educating that had to be done on that part. But she's always been, one of my biggest cheerleaders. So, yeah.
And forgive me if this is a ridiculous analogy, but when people sometimes when people say that they learn about that they have Tourette, it answers all kinds of questions kind of going backward, and they feel like they have, like a different sense of reality from that point on. I have heard from some Touretters, LGBT Touretters, who have kind of likened some of that and even some of their decisions about how open they're going to be about it because of societal judgment. When that light bulb turned on, I mean, I guess that too had to feel like, I mean, that's a major revelation. And I mean, did you kind of regard life differently from that point on?
Yes, absolutely. It was a euphoric moment, honestly, and I completely had this totally different perspective of myself, and I completely agree. I would definitely compare it to realizing that I had Tourette's. I don't exactly remember the light bulb moment for that, but I do remember as a kid not understanding why I felt like I had to do these movements or make these sounds.
Mm-hmm.
People would ask me why I was humming or whatever I was doing, whatever tick I had at the time, and I'd just be like, I don't know, I just feel like I have to do it, and I can't stop myself. And I knew that I had OCD at the time. I've been diagnosed with that already, and I was like, I think it's part of my OCD.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And turns out it kind of is. So I definitely would compare it because you do end up having to come out as having Tourette's as well in a way, you know?
Right. And in my asking that question, I'm not trying to compare the experiences. I did just as a point that others have made to me, that it does that they have had to make some of the same or similar maybe qualifications in their mind of, okay, like who deserves to know this about me, and when do I say this, and that there may be some kind of order of operations for opening up about having something like Tourette that society is not treated quite so fairly, similar to other walks of life. And, I'm not directly, trying to make any comparison points or anything like that, but I have heard from people that they have found some, contacts between those two things.
Yes, absolutely. And it's weirdly enough, like the same people I have felt comfortable coming out about having Tourette's, especially recently with how bad it's gotten, um, are the same people who are supportive of me being trans. And it's like the people I haven't come out to as having Tourette's yet are the same people who have not really been that supportive of me being trans.
Right.
It,
Yeah.
it's definitely like very similar. It's like I have been able to suppress for most of my life to the point that some people extremely close to me did not believe me, and it's been
Huh.
extremely invalidating. Um, and so I've been in search of that validation that, you know, I think a lot of Touretters feel, where they've been able to
Yeah.
express it, and so people don't believe them.
Yeah. That's, I've definitely, none of my friends have specifically straight up doubted me, but I have heard a lot of the, oh God, well, you could never tell, or you do a great job, like stuff like that. And I'm like, no, I'm not trying to do a good job. I'm trying
Yeah.
to tell you that, this is a difficult thing, and I've masked this the whole time. And now I'm trying to open up to you. And I've definitely had a couple of those. But I mean, so are these cases where like people are straight up doubting you?
Yeah. Yeah, I've had people, tell me, not to lie to them. I've had I've had people tell me, maybe it's all in your head. I'm like, it's neurological, but
Right. Yeah, exactly.
it's like it's because of the idea that Tourette's is just yelling swear words, and that they would know if I had Tourette's because I wouldn't be able to stop yelling swear words, and I would have
Yeah.
done it my entire life. And it just the misconceptions about it has created the situation that a lot of us go through, where people just it's so hard to convince people of this syndrome you have. It's exhausting, honestly.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and I'm a free speech guy, but this is definitely one of those occasions where it's like another mark against the Tourette joke for just it's
Mhm.
it's lame material, but it also it does still reinforce what people maybe thought they knew about Tourette. And I know comedy is comedy, and comedy can be absurdity and exaggeration. And it's not, it's like a slanted mirror on reality. But I mean, when people still hear that rhythmic, it's the swearing disease, people definitely have that narrow view of what Tourette is. And yes, a lot of people deal with coprolalia and have a difficult time with it. But just to kind of hear it again and again, that this is this one thing, it is really invalidating to everybody else who has, really potentially serious tics
Yeah.
and something they want to get control over. And society is a huge part of that, of self-acceptance and of, just being able to kind of cope with things on a daily basis. And then you have that level of doubt. I mean, that's a lot. That's like, it feels like a no way forward kind of situation. I don't want to label it that, but I mean, it's like, you can feel like, God, well, I mean, people misunderstand it to the point where they're not going to believe me when I've been diagnosed, or, or whatever. That's heavy.
Right. And it's like, it's gotten to the point where I'm like, I know what I have and I don't have time for this. It's like, I know what I have. I know who I am, because it's the same with being trans. People in your life will try and tell you you're not who you say you are. And it's like, I know who I am. I know what I have, and I don't have time for anything else. So
Yeah.
you just can't waste your energy anymore worrying about the people who try and deny who you are or what you have, and just realize that those who what is it those who matter won't mind, and those who mind don't matter, that kind of
Right.
thing. To bring up the comedy thing with people using Tourette's as a joke, I was really a fan of Tom Segura for a while, and
Yeah.
and then I saw a one special where he used a Tourette's joke, and I was like, you see that meme where there's like an arrow going down, like my respect for him completely.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. It completely dwindled after that. I was like,
Yeah.
it's so easy. It's an easy joke, I feel like.
Yeah, exactly. It's
Yeah.
it's such a low-hanging fruit in terms of, this is going to get a laugh. And sadly it does a lot of times, but like,
Mhm.
it's just it's so, yeah, it's easy. It's cheap material, I feel like.
It is.
And yeah, and when there's somebody out there that I respect, and then I hear them make, some Tourette's line, it's just kind of like, oh, come on, man, and it's someone said this on the podcast before. I forget who, but this is, like when like Jimmy Fallon made a Tourette's joke and Amy Poehler had, the character who had Tourette's. And it's, if somehow it's able to be communicated to them that this is something that can affect people for their whole lives, guess what? It can start in childhood, often does. A lot of kids have it. And then again, trigger warning, if you look at the ideation
Mhm.
rate and attempt rate, and I mean, it's really rattling. And it's a different way to look at something where people might say otherwise, oh well, you can just take a joke, can't you just take a joke? And it's like, yeah, I can. I love comedy. I love edgy comedy, and there's offensive comedy, but there's a clever way to do it. And so far, we haven't gotten it right with the Tourette joke, and I'm not sure if we're going to. And I think we need to kind of, yeah, take a step back and just kind of like think about who might hear it and who might, place judgment on themselves after hearing that joke, 20 times in a row, what they're going to think of
Right.
themselves when they're at a vulnerable age, when they're, really trying to work on self-appraisal and everything. I mean, that's sorry to go long on that, but yeah, I mean, that's huge.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. When all this started just a little bit ago, about a month ago, I I was struggling really, really hard um with the ideation again, because
Hmm.
I'm not somebody that likes, you wouldn't be able to tell from looking at me because I'm heavily tatted and pierced, but I
Hmm.
don't like all eyes on me in a room or in a store, or just any situation. I don't like to be the center of attention. It really bothers me. And
Hmm.
that's exactly what Tourette does to you. Um
Yeah. Yeah.
so I was like, it's just getting so bad. And if I'm going to be dealing with this for the rest of my life, you know, how is this going to go? Like, every phone call I have with, my doctor's office earlier, for example, you have to warn them at the beginning so they don't think you're just, cursing them out or whatever. It's like every single part of your life, every single day is affected by it. And so I just don't feel like, somebody can make a quick 2-minute joke up on stage about it, but then people with actual Tourette can't just put it behind them. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's, I mean, are there ways that you've tried to explain it to people who are maybe kind of resistant to, I don't know if that's the right word, but how have you tried to explain it to people?
So like people like my mom, I have, when it came to trying to educate her on being trans, I have done a very similar thing with trying to educate her on having Tourette's. I used the internet. And so when I came out as trans, I sent my mom a slideshow I found on just basic information and terms on being trans. And I took the initiative to try and educate her on that so that she'd easily be able to, better support me. And so I've done the same with Tourette's. And I'm going to be honest and say that I've used a couple of TikToks here and there, just to show her what more severe ticking looks like, because I'm not 100% sure that she knew exactly what that could look like, especially the motor ticks and stuff like that. And because a lot of people I know actually get the word like twitch and tick mixed up. They think that they're muscle spasms. And yeah. So, and you have to explain the urge that you get before. You really have to make sure you explain that you can suppress for a little bit. At least a lot of people can. And then eventually you have to do it. And that's why, maybe I didn't tick at Thanksgiving dinner, but I'm going to go to my room and tick the night away. So, yeah.
The Tourette Association of America is the premier nonprofit working to raise awareness, advance research, and provide ongoing support for those with Tourette syndrome or a tic disorder. With a network of over 130 chapters, support groups, and centers of excellence, the TAA engages with communities across the nation in an effort to provide tools, webinars, workshops, and support for all seeking assistance. As a primary sponsor of Tourette's podcast, the TAA supports authentic conversations showcasing the diverse representation of the Tourette community. To learn more, go to tourette.org. That's TOURETTE.org. The Tourette Association of America. Uncontrollable, unstoppable. So does when you have tried to suppress your tics in situations where you didn't feel comfortable with it, did that make the situation worse?
Yeah. So, like, for example, I was at Target earlier getting groceries, and I was in the car prior, all the way from my house to Target, ticking so bad that by the time I got to Target, I had a headache and I was nauseous. That's how bad I was ticking. And then I got in Target and I was like, I gotta calm down. And I was doing minor ticks, but I was suppressing the bigger ones. And it was really, really hard for me. And so I'd go down an aisle where there was nobody, and I would do the bigger ticks. I would yell or stomp my feet, and every once in a while somebody would round the corner that I wasn't expecting, and somebody got flipped off earlier because I was flipping off the air, and she rounded the corner, and so yeah, like it's just it was really busy today, and it just wasn't a good time to go for me. But honestly, it's like, when is it ever going to be a really good time to go?
That's so funny because like I've done the same thing when I've needed to just like let out a momentary tick, or it's burning in me and I need to get it out. I've definitely been to the grocery store and just looked for an empty aisle to go down, and sometimes it's like this weird lottery of, just like you round the corner and like, oh, there's somebody there. Go down the next aisle, like, oh, there's somebody there, and it's like, yeah, it's this weird thing of, and sometimes you just have to like go to the back room where there's like the restrooms, and just, I've definitely like let it out before when I just didn't feel comfortable, or it was going to be a particularly loud tick, or
Yeah.
or one that was really sequential that would maybe, and it's weird because like I've gone through different phases of being okay about ticking in public and then being embarrassed about it, and then kind of wondering if there's some strategy and certain situations where, it's not cool to tick and I should accept that, or should it always be okay to tick? And I've definitely kind of like tumbled through these different scenarios a few different times. I mean, is it pretty much when you're with trusted friends? Is that, and when you're by yourself, is that really when you get to kind of just freely be your ticking self?
Yes. Yeah. So when I'm with either like one of my partners or friends or anything like that, I went to Target with my roommate I went to Target with my roommate the other day, and I felt like I could just tick freely. I felt like I could tick whatever I wanted, as loud as I wanted. When
Mm-hmm.
I'm by myself, it's a little more difficult. Um, but I put my headphones in and I just blast your podcast and I just tick. And when I have my headphones in, I don't realize there's people around me, and it helps, because like if they're around me, I don't know it. So I just
Yeah,
allow
yeah.
myself. Yeah. Something else I've done to help me tick in public is I got like buttons that say I have Tourette syndrome. I've gotten shirts and sweatshirts.
Nice.
Um, yeah, I ordered some stuff like just to be like, this is what's happening, without having to just go around and tell everybody. They can see it. And I try not to do the cursing in front of kids if I can help it. But
Mm,
yeah,
yeah.
if I'm down an aisle by myself, or if I've just got my headphones in and I don't know who's around me, then I just try and let it go, because I ain't got no time to suppress.
Has anybody asked you about, like, if you're wearing a piece of clothing that says I have Tourette or a button? Has anybody approached you about that?
No, nobody's approached me yet. I want them to, though. I
Yeah.
want to be able to explain things to people so that they are more understanding. I think that'd be cool if they did. I did have one lady, or it was actually the lady I flipped off. I'm wearing my sweatshirt, and it says in huge letters, it says Tourette syndrome ticks me off.
Yeah, yeah.
And yeah, and I could see that she was reading it, and she had a big smile come up on her face after she read it. So I was like, okay, that's good. Like, she's
Yeah,
understanding of
yeah.
what just happened. So like that could have been, not good situation, but it was good, I think, because of me wearing that. So
That's cool. I mean, that's a legitimate communication.
yeah, that's something I have really found comfort in. It's just wearing something to let people know. And I heard somebody in one of your podcasts talk about getting buttons and stuff that says that. So I went on Etsy and just ordered a bunch of different things.
That's so cool. That is so cool. Um, yeah, I need to re up on my Tourette gear. I still have like wristbands and things like that, and I have a shirt, but I need to get more. I know this isn't a plug. They didn't ask me to say this, but I know the Tread Association has like, I think, a cafe press store with like where you can get messenger bags and things like that. I should probably
Yes,
do that just to get just for awareness.
I saw that. I saw their store, and you can actually get your dog a TA shirt and everything like that. And they have like just about everything you could want when it comes to Tourette swag, I guess you could say.
I'm making eye contact with my dog right now. She doesn't know what's coming. Have you ever tried to, manage your tics in any way, whether it's pharmaceutical or whether it's just something that you've found on your own where you can kind of zone away from your tics being a bother, whether it's to yourself or to other people? Or, I mean, have you ever, how do you manage your Tourette?
Yeah. So when I first got my Tourette's diagnosis in early 20s, it was from a psychiatrist, and they put me on Haldol.
Oh, yeah,
I've
been there.
yeah, I've never seen a person who really like knew much about Tourette syndrome. It was always the okay, let me go like look it up, and I'll figure out what I need to put you on. Uh, so they put me on Haldol, which apparently is a strong antipsychotic. I wasn't aware of that until very recently. I
Hmm.
was on that for a couple years. It, stopped working after a while. They put
Yeah.
me on Risperidol, and that stopped working after a while. And now I'm on Abilify, not just for Tourette's, but for my bipolar. And obviously, the Abilify is just not working at all.
Mm.
And I messaged my psychiatrist recently talking about like what's been going on. And I was like, I really don't think I want any more medication interventions. I really just want some resources to find therapists who might specialize or, know something about Tourette syndrome, or some support groups, because I've been having some issues finding any in this area. Um, so yeah, I'm kind of just done with the medications, honestly.
Are there any activities or anything like that that seem to kind of give you a break from it? Some people talk about whether it's, like doing something creative or listening to music or something like that. Does anything to kind of give you a break from what you're experiencing?
Yeah, so I sing, and I have sung since like fifth grade. I was in show choir for
Nice.
like a decade, and I definitely stop ticking when I'm singing. And so when I'm in the car, which is when I tick the worst, I will just like sing my head off. I'll sing Frank Sinatra or Phantom of the Opera. I do a lot of musical theater. I also paint. I paint directly on my bedroom walls. So my bedroom walls are just covered in pictures and quotes to remind me of certain things. And
Nice.
yeah, so I enjoy painting a lot. I just haven't done it in a while.
Has creativity always been kind of part of your repertoire?
Yeah, mostly musically. I was in private vocal lessons for like 8 years when I was in school, and it really like my teacher was one of the closest people in my life at the time. And I think like when I came out as gay originally, she was the very first person I told. Like she and I had really bonded through the music, and it just meant a lot to me to have that relationship.
Hmm.
And her her business was called Spirit Through Music, and I really felt that.
Yeah, that's awesome.
I've always not ticked at all when I sing, so it's a really nice break.
That is so, I mean, is that something you want to take somewhere? Like I know like you have your own business, and I know if you're an entrepreneur, it's it's difficult to find time away to do anything, but is that something you still pursue?
I um So like I said before, I have a fear of being like the center of attention or having all eyes on me. So it's been really difficult for me to sing in front of people. I definitely would like to sing more in front of people, perform, and
Mhm.
everything, but it's just been so hard for me to get to that point, like anxiety wise, and just having everybody look at me. So there are those few friends that I have sung for, and every time I sing in front of somebody new, they're always like, "Oh my God, I didn't know that was gonna come." of you, and so it always feels really good. Yeah. I honestly, when I first moved to North Carolina in 19, I was looking for a teacher, a vocal teacher again, like I had when I was a kid. And then the pandemic hit, and all lessons like that completely stopped.
Right.
Um,
Yeah.
Sorry, that's cat meowing. And then, and a couple of years later, it all started again, and I hadn't started my business yet, and I was completely broke, and so I couldn't do it then. So it's just been like, and now I'm like extremely busy, so it's just been hard to pursue that again.
Is there any, and so I understand not wanting to be the center of attention, and I don't like it. I mean, I've always been maybe in a situation where I have been performing at least, like a news, and prior to that, it was music is what I did, and playing on stage and stuff like that. Um, but I'm the same way generally. Like I don't really want attention. And it's not because I'm necessarily afraid of judgment. Maybe it is. I'm not really sure, but attention is not something, at least at this point in my life, that I'm really, kind of craving like an audience. I definitely, when it comes to advocacy and stuff like this and doing the podcast, yes, absolutely for those reasons. But yeah, I'm not really looking for an audience for performance, but there's still something about it to me. I remember talking with a couple other people on the podcast who do actual like live performance, playing in front of an audience. And I think they feel roughly the same way, like that, but then there are tremendous nerves, and then they get on stage, and then it's like they get in the zone, and a generic way to say it would be like adrenaline takes over, as like, as people say. And then they're able to just kind of perform and not tick. And this is not universally true, but just testimony from past people who've been on the podcast. I kind of wonder if that is something that would work if you just kind of like felt in the zone and you're able to kind of do it with people around you who were supporting you.
That's very possible. It is very possible, especially if there are people there that I know and that support me. That's always very helpful. I know when I was in show choir, I tried out for lots and lots of solos and stuff like that. I never got one. But the reason I never got one is because I'd get up for the audition, and I would start, and my nerves would be causing my voice to shake so bad that I ended up not being anywhere near as good as I actually can be. So I think I freak myself out unnecessarily, and it causes me to end up being worse, which ends up giving me more anxiety. So it's another endless cycle. And so it's the introversion. I am definitely an introvert, and I used to think I was an extrovert, and now I'm like, are you kidding me? I don't know if I used to be an extrovert, but yeah, it takes a lot out of me to do very much interacting, or to go to the store when there's a lot of people there. I'll go to Target, for example, and if there's a lot of people in that parking lot, I'll turn right around and go home. Especially right now with my tics being this bad, it just takes so much out of me. I never go to any Walmarts because I don't ever feel like there's any Walmarts that are not busy. So, it's just, I'm extremely introverted, and it's just the whole spoon theory. I use that a lot.
Yeah, for sure. Me too. I feel like I've said this before. Maybe I kind of call those situations, I just abbreviate them as Whole Foods, like where they have like, kind of like narrow, and I can talk about Whole Foods. They're never going to sponsor the podcast. Where they have like, really narrow aisles, and there are all kinds of people just competing for space. And, where you're standing is where 5 other people with shopping carts are also trying to get. So, I had this like anxiety of getting my ankles messed up, and 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 I get on edge, and it's the same way in like a crowded Target or a Walmart any time of day, or it's but yeah, like in situations like that, it's just I'm not compatible with them.
Yes, like earlier at Target, there was somebody, like I do this exact same thing, but she was doing this to me where I was looking at something on an aisle and she was standing probably 6 feet away, waiting for me to like move away from what she was trying to look at as well. And I could
Yeah.
tell, but you're over there trying to be subtle and you don't want to like rush them. And so like I'm so like so introverted that I can't even just be like, excuse me, I need to grab this. I'm just sitting over there waiting while, and they can feel your eyes on them. It's like, yeah.
It's so uncomfortable. I don't know. And it's funny because I'm trying to think of like some kind of like sage wisdom for how I've dealt with situations gracefully like that in the past, and I really can't come up with anything. I'm just not compatible with just really crowded environments, which is kind of weird because sometimes I do feel comfortable in certain crowded environments, like if it's a big dense city and maybe the context of it makes sense, and like getting on like a train car or something like that. Mm-hmm. There's something about the chaos of that also does kind of work for me and makes me feel a little bit more comfortable, say like ticking, to where I feel like I might get noticed less because there's so much, stimuli around and that's, sucking up everybody else's attention. It's kind of weird that there is a threshold to where like it can get so crowded and crazy that it works and I'm loving it. But any sort of middle ground, like, going to, like Walmart any time of day or whatever that's not going to do it for me. I'm just going to stay home.
Yes. I agree with the whole city thing. I am very much a city person. Mm-hmm. Like I may be introverted, but I'm not the kind of person who wants to go and live in the country and everything like that. I tried that and I got depressed. I'm very much a city person, yet at the same time, I can't handle certain crowds. It's complicated.
Right. Yeah. Maybe we should do all of our shopping on Black Friday.
Yes.
Maybe that's how it works.
It's so busy. I remember the last time I went Black Friday shopping, you can't even move. You're like packed like sardines in the mall. Yeah. And at the time I wasn't ticking very bad at all. So I don't even know how it would be this year. That'd be interesting to find out. Yeah.
Is there anything I haven't asked? Like, what else would you like people to know? Like anything that you've tried to communicate about what it's like to have Tourette syndrome and have every time I say the word comorbids or comorbidities, someone writes in to tell me that like I can't wait to be done with that word. Maybe let's say co-occurring conditions, and I guess I kind of agree. Maybe I'll say that from now on, but. Dealing with Tourette and co-occurring conditions, is there anything that you've wanted to relate to the world when it comes to that?
So it might sound hypocritical because I'm still working on this myself, but I feel like having Tourette syndrome, it's extremely easy to feel so invalidated for so many reasons, because of the public's perception of what Tourette's is, and people in your personal life and the fact that they might never have seen you tick because of suppression and stuff like that. It's so easy to feel invalidated. And I feel like at that point, you just realize, I know who I am, I know what I have, and I don't have time for anything else. And really just, and just not let it get to your head like that, That's really it.
That's beautifully said. That's really beautifully said. I mean, I think sometimes new listeners will come to the show looking, maybe for some ultimate advice, or parents might come to the show looking for some pieces of ultimate advice. And I think it's really more about that. Like a lot of us don't have direct answers, but just to do what we can the way we can in our own ways, to not let it go too far, to not let the feeling of of being delegitimized, throw off what we know to be true about ourselves. And, at the end of the day, before we go to sleep, like, we know what the truth is about ourselves. We may still have a lot of questions about, how this works, what we're going to do tomorrow, all that stuff. But, we still know the truth, and our close friends, hopefully we all have them, do as well. And, that's validating enough for me. It feels like, and I would hope that other people find validation in the same things.
Absolutely. And I feel like a lot of my fellow trans Touretters will understand the feeling of, invalidation by the people around you, being told you're not who you are. And you can't go through day-to-day life letting that get to you and freak you out. You have to just realize that you know who you are, and, don't worry about other people.
Thanks for listening. Thanks so much to Erick for his time with us and all he brought to the conversation. I'd love your feedback. If this episode produced any questions or comments in your mind, then please send to tourettespodcast@gmail.com or use the contact form at tourettespodcast.com. I read everything that comes in. I'm not always able to reply immediately, but your messages are always delivered. I always read them. You can also go to the Tourette's Podcast discussion group on Facebook, run by the amazing Sophia in the UK. Thanks always to her for what she does there. Also, to remind, this is a closed discussion group, so you have to request to join. And when you do that, there are some questions to answer to essentially keep the bots and the bad faith people out of the group. So please make sure you answer those questions so we can let you in. It's an awesome place, and it's perfect to bring any reflections you might have from this episode. Tourette's Podcast is sponsored by the Tourette Association of America, online at tourette.org, now in its 50th year as an organization. And don't forget that gala coming up, November 10th, tourette.org. We will leave you to it, and we'll be back soon with another episode of Tourette's Podcast. Thanks again for listening. This is Ben.